This story is titled, Husband's Family Blamed Me for His Depression Because I Changed Him. Discovered he lost his job 6 months ago and was pretending to go to work while gambling our savings. My hands shake uncontrollably as I stare at our empty joint bank account, the devastating truth finally hitting me like a thunderbolt. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal. 6 months of watching my husband kiss me goodbye every morning, dressed impeccably in his suits, pretending to go to a job he no longer had. How could I have been so blind? The man I thought I knew better than myself had been living a double life, and his family had the audacity to blame me for his spiral into depression. I'm Jessica, 29F, and until 2 weeks ago, I thought I was living the American dream with my husband Ryan, 31M. We met in college. He was the ambitious business major with a 5-year plan, and I was the art student who made him laugh. His mother Linda, 58F, never approved of me, convinced I would derail her precious son's career with my unstable artistic pursuits. His sister Ashley, 27F, followed her mother's lead, treating me with thinly veiled contempt at every family gathering. The only ally I had in Ryan's family was his father, Thomas, 60M, a kind-hearted accountant who always defended my choice to pursue a career as an art teacher. "Follow your passion," he would say, much to Linda's obvious displeasure. The irony of an accountant supporting my artistic dreams, while his business-minded wife disapproved, wasn't lost on me. Ryan and I had been married for 4 years, and I thought we were happy. We had our routines: morning coffee together, texts throughout the day, dinner dates on Fridays. He would tell me about his stressful days at the investment firm, and I would share funny stories about my middle school art students. We were saving for a house, planning for children, building our future brick by brick. Looking back, the signs were there, but I refused to see them. The way Ryan's smile became a little too practiced, his kisses a little too mechanical. The mysterious calls he would take outside, claiming they were work-related. The growing distance in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. But nothing prepared me for what I would discover: a truth so devastating it would shatter not just our marriage, but everything I thought I knew about the man I loved. I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon, and I was preparing to grade some student projects when I received a call that would unravel the carefully woven tapestry of my life. The caller's words still echo in my head, each syllable a hammer blow to my reality. "Mrs. Walker, this is regarding your husband's gambling debt." What debt? Ryan had always been the responsible one, meticulously managing our finances. Or so I thought. Little did I know, this was just the tip of an iceberg of deception that would soon emerge, threatening to drown not just our marriage, but our entire lives. And his family? They had the nerve to point fingers at me, claiming I had changed their perfect son. If only they knew the truth that was about to explode in all our faces. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how everything fell apart, you need to know how it all began. That phone call about Ryan's gambling debt sent me into a spiral of investigation that made me question every moment of our shared life. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when the changes began 6 months ago, when Ryan came home late one night, his usually pristine suit wrinkled, his face ashen. He claimed it was work stress, that his firm was going through restructuring. I held him that night as he trembled in our bed, believing I was comforting my husband through a difficult career phase. God, what a fool I was. The signs multiplied like cancer cells after that night. Ryan started taking longer to get ready in the mornings, meticulously adjusting his tie in the mirror as if preparing for a performance. His goodbye kisses tasted of desperation, and mint gum always meant gum, I realize now, to mask the smell of cigarettes he'd started smoking in secret. He would send me photos from his office, during lunch breaks, always the same angle, always the same corner of his desk. How did I not notice they were all taken on the same day? The weekly dinners with Ryan's family became increasingly tense. Linda would make pointed comments about how thin and stressed Ryan looked, shooting accusatory glances my way. "Perhaps if Jessica had chosen a more stable career, you wouldn't feel so much pressure to provide," she would say, her words dripping with venomous concern. Even Thomas, my usual defender, seemed worried about his son's changing behavior, though he never joined in his wife's blame game. I started noticing small financial discrepancies: bills paid late despite Ryan's insistence that he'd handle them, mysterious cash withdrawals that he explained away as client dinners or office expenses. When I suggested we review our budget together, he would become defensive, reminding me that he'd always managed our finances perfectly. His voice would take on a sharp edge I'd never heard before, making me feel small for even asking. The breaking point came during Ashley's engagement party last month. Ryan was acting strange all evening, constantly checking his phone, sweating profusely despite the air conditioning. When his mother cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes blazing with maternal fury, I couldn't have predicted the devastating chain of events her words would trigger. "You've destroyed him," Linda hissed, gripping her wine glass so tightly I feared it might shatter. "My son used to be confident, successful. Now look at him jumping at shadows, losing weight, avoiding family. What have you done to him?" The worst part? I found myself beginning to believe her. Had I somehow contributed to whatever was happening to my husband? That night, after we returned home, I caught Ryan in our home office at 3 a.m., hunched over his laptop, frantically moving money between accounts. When I asked what he was doing, he slammed the laptop shut with such force that I jumped. The wild look in his eyes, the trembling of his hands, it was like looking at a stranger wearing my husband's face. The next morning, he left for work, as usual, but something inside me had shifted. The foundation of trust I'd built my marriage on had cracked, and through those cracks, a terrible truth was beginning to seep. I just didn't know then how deep that truth would go, or how many lives it would destroy when it finally burst to the surface. What I discovered in the following days would shake our family to its core, revealing that Ryan's lies went far beyond anything I could have imagined. And ironically, the person who would help me uncover the full scope of his deception would be the last person I ever expected to be on my side. The truth came from Thomas, of all people, on a rain-soaked Wednesday afternoon that would forever divide my life into before and after. My father-in-law showed up at my school during my lunch break, his normally immaculate accountant's appearance disheveled, his eyes carrying the weight of a man about to shatter his own son's carefully constructed house of lies. The devastating irony? Thomas had discovered Ryan's deception through his position at the accounting firm where he worked. A colleague had mentioned seeing Ryan at the Blue Ridge Casino, not once or twice, but almost daily, during what should have been his working hours. My husband, who was supposed to be managing million-dollar investments, had been spending his days feeding quarters into slot machines and playing high-stakes poker with money we didn't have. My hands gripped my desk as Thomas revealed the brutal truth. Ryan had been fired 6 months ago for making unauthorized trades, desperate attempts to cover mounting gambling debts that had started even before his termination. But instead of telling anyone, he maintained an elaborate charade dressing for work, sending fake emails, even creating false pay stubs to maintain the illusion of employment. The sequence of revelations hit me like psychological grenades. Our savings account? Empty. Our retirement fund? Decimated. The house down payment we've been saving for? Gone. Each disclosure was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, another shard of glass in my heart. The worst part? Ryan had taken out loans in my name, using the power of attorney I'd trustingly given him years ago. My mind reeled back to all those family dinners, where Linda had blamed me for Ryan's deteriorating state. The bitter taste of vindication mixed with horror as Thomas explained how he'd finally connected the dots. The weight loss, the nervous behavior, the constant phone-checking, classic signs of a gambling addiction that his own mother had mistaken for marital unhappiness. I felt the hysterical urge to laugh. All those times Linda had accused me of changing her son, he had been systematically destroying our future one betting slip at a time. The perfect son had been perfect at only one thing: deception. And I, the supposedly destabilizing artistic wife, had been the unwitting anchor he'd used to maintain his facade of normalcy. But Thomas wasn't finished. His voice trembling, he revealed the detail that would transform my pain into white-hot fury. Ashley, Ryan's sister, had known about his gambling for months. She'd seen him at the casino while having lunch with friends, but instead of telling anyone, she'd helped maintain his cover story. She'd even lent him money, believing his promises that he just needed time to win it all back. Their mother's golden children, conspiring together while pointing fingers at the outsider who had supposedly ruined their family's perfect image. As I sat there, processing this tsunami of betrayal, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." The casual lie, so familiar now, sparked something in me, a revelation that would lead to the most dramatic confrontation our family had ever seen. I looked at Thomas, seeing the same determination in his eyes that I felt building in my chest. The time for secrets was over. But what happened next would test not just my marriage, but the very foundation of the Walker family's carefully maintained facade of perfection. The confrontation erupted like a psychological volcano at the Walker family's Sunday dinner, a tradition that had always felt suffocating but now seemed almost cinematically perfect for the implosion of our carefully constructed lives. I sat there, a time bomb of knowledge ticking inside my chest, watching Ryan perform his usual charade of normalcy while Linda beamed at her precious son with manufactured maternal pride. The silverware clinked against expensive china wedding gifts from 4 years ago, when we were all still playing our assigned roles in the Walker family theater. Ryan's hand trembled slightly as he lifted his wine glass, the red liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. I wondered how many secret trips to the casino he'd already made that day, how many hundreds or thousands of our dollars he'd fed into the endless hunger of his addiction while his family blamed me for his deterioration. Thomas caught my eye across the table, his face a mask of contained anguish. We've spent the past 3 days meticulously documenting everything: the emptied accounts, the forged signatures, the elaborate web of lies that Ryan had spun while his sister Ashley played willing accomplice. The weight of the manila envelope in my bag felt like a live grenade, waiting to detonate our picture-perfect family dinner. Linda was in rare form that evening, her passive-aggressive barbs hitting their marks with surgical precision. "Ryan looks so tired lately," she observed, her eyes boring into me like ice picks. "Perhaps if he didn't have to work so hard to maintain a certain lifestyle." The irony of her words almost made me choke on my wine. If she only knew her perfect son hadn't worked a single day in 6 months. The breaking point came when Ashley, drunk on both wine and her own complicity, started reminiscing about Ryan's recent promotion, a complete fabrication he'd invented to explain away some of his gambling wins. The casual way she bolstered his lies, all while shooting me smugly triumphant looks, made something snap inside me with an almost audible crack. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against Linda's precious hardwood floors. The sound cut through the dinner conversation like a knife, and suddenly all eyes were on me. I pulled out the documents Thomas and I had gathered, letting them spill across the pristine tablecloth like accusations made paper. Bank statements, casino receipts, loan documents in my name that I had never signed. Each piece of paper was another nail in the coffin of the Walker family's perfectly maintained facade. Ryan's face drained of color so rapidly I thought he might faint. Ashley's smug smile crumbled like a sandcastle in high tide. But it was Linda's reaction that seared itself into my memory. As the evidence of her son's deception spread across her perfectly set dinner table, her face underwent a transformation that was almost mythological in its intensity. The mask of maternal superiority cracked, revealing something raw and primal underneath the desperate denial of a mother forced to confront the truth about her golden child. What happened next would redefine the meaning of family loyalty and betrayal in ways none of us could have anticipated. Because sometimes, when a family's foundation of lies finally crumbles, what rises from the ashes isn't just truth, it's a whole new kind of devastation. The silence that followed my revelation was like the eye of a hurricane, deceptively quiet, but charged with imminent destruction. Linda's hands, perfectly manicured talons that had so often gestured dismissively at my life choices, now clutched a casino receipt dated just 3 hours earlier. The paper trembled between her fingers like a living thing, betraying the seismic shifts happening beneath her carefully maintained exterior. But it was Ryan's response that shocked everyone. Instead of denial or shame, his face contorted with a kind of desperate relief, as if the weight of his deception had been physically crushing him. Tears streamed down his face as he confessed not just to the gambling, but to a lifetime of trying to live up to impossible expectations. Each word was like a sledgehammer to the foundation of the Walker family mythology. The golden son, the perfect businessman, the dutiful heir to Linda's carefully curated dynasty, it had all been a performance as elaborate as his fake work routine. He'd started gambling in college, he revealed, small bets at first, just trying to feel something, anything, beyond the suffocating pressure of familial perfection. By the time we married, he was already in deep, using his investment expertise to shuffle money and hide his growing addiction. Ashley's composure shattered like fine crystal. Through mascara-stained tears, She admitted to finding him at the casino 6 months ago, passed out in his car after losing an entire month's salary. Instead of getting him help, she'd bought into his desperate promises of one more bet, one more chance to fix everything. She'd emptied her own savings trying to help him chase his losses, their shared delusion of maintaining the family's reputation stronger than their grip on reality. But it was Thomas's next revelation that transformed the evening from family drama to Greek tragedy. His voice carrying decades of repressed pain, he looked directly at Linda and spoke words that made the air itself seem to freeze. "He got it from you, didn't he? The gambling, the lies, the desperate need to maintain appearances. Just like your father before you." Linda's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotion: shock, rage, devastation before settling into something I'd never seen before. Raw, unfiltered vulnerability. The perfect matriarch mask cracked completely, revealing the wounded daughter beneath. Her own father, the revered patriarch whose portrait still hung in their family room, had gambled away their inheritance decades ago. Linda had spent her entire adult life trying to rebuild what he destroyed, crafting an image of familial perfection, so complete that even her own son felt he couldn't crack it. The generational trauma laid bare across Linda's imported tablecloth was staggering. 3 generations of Walkers, each trying to fill an emotional void with the hollow promise of one more win, one more bet, one more chance at redemption. And there I sat, the outsider they'd blamed for their son's destruction, watching as their carefully constructed reality imploded. Ryan reached for my hand across the ruins of our shared life, but I pulled away. The time for easy comfort was long past. What lay ahead would require more than just forgiveness. It would demand a complete dismantling of the toxic family legacy that had brought us to this point. But first, there was one more devastating truth that needed to be spoken. The final truth emerged like a psychological thunderbolt, delivered through my trembling hands as I placed one last document on the table: a positive pregnancy test result from 3 weeks ago. The paper landed between Ryan's empty wine glass and Linda's shaking hands, a small rectangle that might as well have been a nuclear bomb for the devastation it unleashed. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of Ryan's sharp intake of breath. I watched the realization hit him that while he'd been destroying our financial future at the casino, I'd been carrying the next generation of his family's legacy of secrets and shame. The irony was almost unbearable. I'd been waiting for the right moment to tell him, wanting to make it special, while he'd been systematically dismantling everything we built together. Linda's face crumpled in on itself, aging decades in seconds as she looked from the test result to her son, then back to me. For the first time since I'd known her, there was no judgment in her eyes, only a bone-deep recognition of history preparing to repeat itself. She reached for her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a worn photograph I'd never seen before, her own mother, pregnant with her, standing beside her gambling-addicted father. 3 generations of Walker women, bound together by the weight of men's destructive choices. Thomas moved to comfort his wife, but she recoiled as if his touch burned. "I became my mother," she whispered, her voice raw with revelation. "I raised my son to become my father." The perfectly coiffed matriarch who had terrorized my marriage crumbled before our eyes, replaced by a wounded child who had spent her entire life running from a legacy she'd unknowingly perpetuated. Ashley fled the room in tears, but not before letting one final truth slip. She'd been enabling Ryan because she'd caught him attempting suicide in his car outside the casino 3 months ago. The weight of this revelation hit me like a physical blow while I'd been teaching art to middle schoolers. Playing nursery colors in my head, my husband had been contemplating ending his life rather than facing his demons. Ryan reached for me again, his eyes wild with desperation. "We can fix this," he pleaded, but his words rang hollow in the wreckage of our shared life. I cradled my still flat stomach, thinking of the child growing inside me, wondering how to break a chain of trauma that seemed determined to bind generation after generation. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I won't let our child inherit this legacy of secrets and shame. The cycle ends with me." I stood up from the ruins of our last family dinner, my decision crystallizing with awful clarity. The next few months would be a gauntlet of lawyers, therapy sessions, and painful restructuring of lives. Ryan would need serious help not just for gambling, but for the deeper wounds that had driven him to the casino's false promises of redemption. Linda would have to confront her own unresolved trauma, and Ashley her enabling behavior. As for me, I left the Walker house that night knowing I would never return as Ryan's wife. But I also carried with me a fierce determination that my child would know a different kind of family story, one built on truth, no matter how painful, rather than the destructive perfection that had poisoned the Walkers for generations. Thomas followed me to my car, his accountant's precision now turned to planning his son's recovery rather than hiding his crimes. "You're stronger than all of us," he said softly, his eyes full of understanding. "The baby, they're lucky to have you." I drove away from the wreckage of my married life with tears streaming down my face, one hand on my stomach, feeling strangely light despite the weight of all that had happened. Sometimes, I realized, it takes complete devastation to build something truly honest from the ashes. The Walkers would never be the same, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they needed.